Hello everyone and welcome back to Aero League Racing Tier 2. My name is Aman and you all join me today for what should be a very exciting race here at Japan. We go to Suzuka for 27 laps around this beautiful circuit. We only have a few minutes left now until I think we get the lobby underway. So until then, make sure you grab yourself a drink, maybe grab a loved one, something to eat, and we should be getting started very, very soon. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, we only have a few more minutes left until I think we get the race underway. So while we have the chance, why not discuss the standings real quick? So in the driver standings, Bambino currently leads the championship with a total of 112 points. We have DDK in P2 with 76 points. We have Jim in P3 with 72 points. In P4, we have Jaguar with 50 points. And in P5, we have Jack with 46. The rest of the top 10 would include Dax, Said Al-Falasi, Nikudza, RVL Volcano, and Trems. And that will round off your driver standings. Looking at the constructor standings, on the other hand, Mercedes currently lead the championship with 122 points, but AlphaTauri following closely behind with 80. We have Williams in P3 with 76 points. We have Red Bull in P4 with 71 points, and Ferrari in P5 with 52. The rest of the top 10 would include Alpine, McLaren, Aston Martin, Haas, and Alfa Romeo, respectively. So, championship still could easily go either way. It's clear to see that Bambino has been making a clear headway in terms of the championship, winning the last four of his races in which he did finish. Obviously, having that one race he did not participate in Hungary, but we still should be interested. We still should be in store for what should be a very exciting race today at Suzuka. So, the track obviously being a very high downforce heavy circuit, I wouldn't be surprised to see if most of the drivers are going to be running higher wings this time around, just to keep up with that dreaded S section, which of course is known to cause a lot of issues for a lot of drivers and cause them to spin out. Not to mention, but Japan is also infamous for having its unpredictable weather. So, who knows? We might be experiencing some. Ooh, my voice chat was suspended, but we might be experiencing some rain, either in qualifying or the actual race itself. So maybe potential safety cars and potential rains could throw in some loops for the drivers, but we'll see how they combat and how they deal with such harsh conditions. But only a few more minutes now before we get started, so I think we'll just wait until we get into qualifying then. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, we are all set to get the Japanese Grand Prix underway. And right before drivers get a chance to go out onto the circuit, I think it would be great chance to maybe get my track map and data and everything underway. So who will be the first driver to go out on track? Obviously, looking at the track map on the bottom right side of your screen, you can see that dreaded S section that I was talking about in Sector 1. Very high speed, very high downforce section of the track, but also a very easy place to make a lot of mistakes. We can see there's a bit of activity at the McLaren garage, as that seems to be Perzemu, who's about to head out for what should be the first time lap out on the circuit. Assuming that nobody else overtakes him out on this out lap of his. And what we'll do is we'll stay on board with him so we can get an idea of what this track has in store for us, as there's some more activity in the McLaren garage, as I believe. Oh no, it's the Ferrari. Oh no, it isn't a Ferrari. Is that the Alfa Romeo? No. Oh, it is the Ferrari. It is the Ferrari. Okay. But yes, this is what I was talking about, this S section that's so notorious for taking drivers out. Obviously, a lot of drivers will struggle to go here side by side with each other, but that's what's going to separate some of these good drivers from the rest of the pack, is how well they can keep it side by side with each other as they come across such a tight and narrow circuit. I think we should be overall be in store for an exciting race. I'm hoping someone in the session can give me a weather update and tell me if there's going to be rain in the race itself. But as for qualifying, it does look like we have a clear sky out ahead of us, so we shouldn't be expecting any wet tires to come out today. Running on board with Perzemu as he rides us through this lap. We're coming through, I believe this is Spoon, and then we have I can't remember this. I can never remember these corner names. I can't remember if it's 120R, 130R. I'm not too sure. As most of the drivers now have exited the pit lane and now are out on their out laps. Riding on board with Perzemu. He's going to be coming across the final chicane, and followed by this long right-hander, which will now, just as I was saying that, Perzemu's absolutely lost the car right before starting his time lap. And that's going to be absolutely painful for him as he decides to come back into the pits to recover those tires as they're completely dusted. And so I guess we'll bring our attention down to RVL Volcano, who's I don't think I've commentated over him before, so I'm excited to see what he has in store for us. It's absolutely tragic for Perzemu as he did everything right on his out lap, only to spin out on the final corner. But it just goes to show you the unpredictable nature of a circuit like this. You really need to be on your toes 24/7. Even the slightest bit of, like, if you just slightly become casual about your race, you'll easily spin out and you will suffer massive consequences because of that. Luckily for us, Perzemu did not actually DNF, and now riding on board with RVL Volcano, he's going to be running us through the first time lap here at Suzuka. So, beginning his lap now, heading down the long pit straight towards the fast right-hander, and going through this S section. We'll have to see how nice and tight he can keep it through this area. We'll ride on board with him through this part. And Volcano absolutely sending it through his corners. Misses the apex slightly on that last curve, but he does keep it nice and tidy for himself. And now coming towards the end of Sector 1, let's see what sort of times he's putting up. He does set a 31.4. So a very respectable Sector 1 for him. We'll see how it fares in comparison to the rest of the field. But now Volcano coming through this Sector 2 section. We can expect a lot of overtaking opportunities here. This left-hander, this double left-hander that follows up where Volcano's going through at this current moment. Obviously, a lot of track space over there and a lot of possible overtaking opportunities. So I think we'll be in store for some great racing in here today, even though there are only, unfortunately, 13 drivers currently out on track. As Zab says, the fastest time of the race. That's interesting. I thought Volcano was going to be the second driver out, but it seems like he might have given the position up to someone else. Samet now crossing the line with a 128.4, sits on provisional pole, and now Volcano coming through the final corner, comes across the line, sets a 127.3, a very respectable lap time for him, roughly 1.1 seconds faster than P2. So it's safe to say a few of these other drivers have a lot of places to make up. We can see DDK has unfortunately invalidated his lap time. Nikudza now setting a purple Sector 1. A very fast time for him. Riding on board with Nikudza, we'll have to see how he fares. Saeed Al-Falasi coming across the line, setting a 128.2, roughly 9/10 behind RVL Volcano. So a bunch of these drivers still off the pace from provisional pole, but we'll see how Nikudza can do, as this is the driver we've been riding on board with for a considerable amount of time. Set a purple sector 1, sets a purple sector 2. And now Nikudza looks like he's in great shape to maybe take provisional pole away from Volcano, as long as he can get these last few corners absolutely spot on. And it looks like he gets to the chicane perfectly. Coming through the final corner now, and now once again coming across the line, Nikudza sets himself a 128.7. And despite having a purple sector 1 and purple sector 2, he lost significant amount of time there in the sector 3. And is unfortunately going to be a bit off the pace from provisional pole. DDK obviously had his lap invalidated. Trems now going through sector 1. Doesn't seem to be or maybe it doesn't look like he's pushing too hard at the moment. We'll take a look at what Przem was up to. Obviously had that spin earlier in his out lap. We'll be looking to bounce back from that and set a very competitive lap time. I think he's had to obviously use up a set of tires, which he's not going to be happy about. Will limit the amount of runs he can go for in this race, or during qualifying at least. We're riding on board with Przemu now as he's coming towards the final chicane. Currently in P12 with no lap time set at the moment. Cunning Fern setting a 2 minutes and 4 second lap. Obviously had some sort of incident in his lap. But Przemu now coming across the line sets a 128.9, and that slots him into P5, a respectable lap time for him considering that he's considering the competition he's around, but obviously still most of the drivers being massively off the pace. But one driver who I do want to keep my eye on is, of course, Bambino, your current championship leader in the Mercedes. Volcano setting a very, very, very impressive lap time for himself. It'll be interesting to see how Bambino can bounce back from this. He's obviously won the last 4 races he's participated in, obviously excluding the Hungary race that he missed. So I think it's very safe to say that he's been on an absolute roll recently. But will he be able to continue? It gets a purple sector 2. I'm not too sure how much I want to trust that information now, seeing as how Przemu had one as well, but finished in P5 along with Nikudza. But Bambino now coming through the final corner, absolutely cuts through the grass there, comes across the line, sets a 127.7, still 4/10 off of Volcano. Wow. Most of the drivers have now entered back into the pits by the looks of it. And they're going to be preparing themselves to go out for their second runs. You can see Davey and Jag Kings currently beginning their lap times. Jag Kings now coming across the line and now beginning his first timed run of the session. Right on board with him as he comes through this X section, obviously having that car in the middle there that luckily he does avoid. It seemed to be the Alpine of Saeed Al-Falasi. Oh no, it wasn't the Alpine of Saeed. Was that Williams? It was the Williams. And we have a yellow flag in sector 1 and 2. Not too sure who that was or why that happened. So let's see what sort of times we can set. We can see Nikudza now promoting himself up into the 127.9, and Jaguar now setting a very impressive lap time himself, overtaking Bambino with a 127.6, still roughly 3/10 off of pole position. It's obvious that a lot of these drivers are going to need to find that extra bit of speed if they're looking to fight with Volcano, who's currently on an outlap himself, so it's safe to say he's looking to improve. But Jack Kings now hasn't set any massively surprising lap times himself, so I don't think it's going to be too fast of a lap from the McLaren driver as he now comes across the line and sets for himself a 128.7, which slots him right above his teammate in P7. Jaguar obviously getting out of the way for most of these other drivers. You can see Davey out on a lap time of himself. Currently out on the Haas. And through this S section he comes. It doesn't look like it's a particularly fast lap time from him either. And it doesn't really light up the timing sheets either. But we'll keep an eye on him to see where he ends up. I do want to bring my attention to some of these other drivers. So Nikudza obviously had a very impressive lap time himself. but he's most likely going to be coming back into the pits to refuel his car and to change onto a different set of tires. We'll ride on board with your current provisional pole position sitter. Volcano now with 127.3 is looking to improve on this occasion. Now coming through the S sections in Sector 1. We'll ride on board with him to see how he go through this corner. Obviously very nice and tight, not missing a single apex. And he has a fantastic run through the S's over there. I wouldn't be surprised if he manages to set himself a purple Sector 1 once again. And as he comes towards the end of Sector 1, he sets a... He does go faster on this occasion, however, does not set a purple Sector 1 for himself, roughly half a tenth faster than his previous lap. And granted, he keeps up this pace, he'll obviously be pushing that bar way higher for the rest of the drivers, who are not going to be too pleased to see the progress Volcano is making throughout the session. It seems like DDK just set a very impressive lap time for himself, a 127.8, and manages to put himself up into P4. And now Volcano coming towards the end of Sector 2. Let's see if he's up or down on his time. He is up, sets a purple Sector 2 with almost a tenth up, a bit more than a tenth up on his current lap time. And now coming through the final few corners, assuming that he can keep it very nice and tidy, which it seems like he was able to do. Comes across the line. What times will Volcano be setting? He sets at 127.282, roughly a tenth faster than his previous lap time. Not a significant improvement, but when you're 4 tenths ahead of the rest of the field, you got to be feeling pretty comfortable with your current situation. DDK seems to be on an incredibly slow lap at the moment. That's probably because he's going to be coming back into the pits not too long now. Davey, on the other hand, in the Haas, currently going through Sector 2. It doesn't look like he's going particularly quickly either. Most likely not on a current run. But Samet, on the other hand, coming through Sector 1, let's see how fast he is on his current lap time. He's roughly a tenth and a half up than on his previous lap time, that being a 128.2. Oh. We have another yellow flag through Sector 3. It seems to be the Alpine over there. I'm pretty sure that's the Alpine this time, yes. Samet now currently in P7. He was up by a tenth and a half through Sector 1. Now coming through Sector 2, it seems he has actually lost a considerable amount of time, roughly 2 tenths now, down on his previous lap time. And with only 5 minutes left to go in the session and most of the drivers now back into the pits, I would assume that the sensible decision would be to abandon your lap and just go back in. And yep, that is exactly what Samet seems to be doing. Decides to abandon his lap and prepare for what should be the final run for most of these drivers. Perzemo in the McLaren obviously doesn't look like he's going particularly quickly either. And as most of these drivers now come back into the pits, we can see Bambino comes across the line, sets a 127.5, still roughly 3 tenths off of Volcano's time. He's going to have to absolutely rush back into the pits if he's hoping to make it towards the line in time with only 4 minutes left to go in qualifying. So then, ladies and gentlemen, 3 minutes 30 seconds left to go in the session. The only drivers currently out on track being Jack Kings and Bambino. Bambino obviously rushing back to the pits as soon as possible, and it looks like Jack Kings, who I believe just set a lap time for himself, will most likely not be able to make it to the line in time, unfortunately. But Bambino obviously is absolutely sending it into every corner, trying to get back in time, and it looks like his car is also completely out of fuel. Luckily for him, he did seem to manage it pretty well, so he only has a few more corners left to go before he can enter the pits. But already we can see a few drivers now making their way out Trends and Blurry Julio being the only two drivers at the moment who've unfortunately not set a current lap time for themselves. Haven't even gone, yeah, haven't even, yeah, they just haven't gotten a chance to set a current lap time for themselves. But Trends and Blurry being one of the first few drivers to enter out into the pit, enter out onto the track for hopefully what should be the final run through the session. It's a bit of a runaway from our provisional pole sitter, who's clearly out here to make a statement with a 3/10 gap to P2 at the moment, and but it's comforting almost to see how close the rest of the field is together on a track like Suzuka. I would have imagined that there would have been a bit more disparity between throughout the whole field, but surprisingly not. It's a very pleasant surprise to see them all so close together. Now the big question becomes who will be one of the first few drivers to cross the line and set the first few lap times. So it looks like at the moment, I want to make sure that I get this right. It looks like Davey is most likely going to be one of the first few drivers to come across the line, or is it the Mercedes of Blurry? Oh, it is the Mercedes of Blurry. All right, so we're right on board with Blurry Julio, who has unfortunately not gotten a chance to set a timed lap here, but now it should be his final attempt with 1 minute and 20 seconds left to go in the session. This is the only chance he's going to get, so he's going to have to make it count. Blurry now coming through Sector 1 and approaching the S section. Has to make sure that he keeps it nice and tight. He nearly goes off track and invalidates his lap. Luckily for us, he doesn't do so and keeps himself right on track. And Volcano gets a 5-place grid penalty for illegal blocking. What has happened there? It seems to be that one of the drivers was out on a current lap, and it looks like the Ferrari of Volcano's absolutely blocked him out on circuit, and that's cost him a 5-place grid penalty. That's absolutely unfortunate, but riding on board with Blurry now, unfortunately we didn't get a chance to see what sort of times he set through Sector 1. But he does have a lot of traffic ahead of him. Let's hope that he doesn't catch up to it. Obviously, Volcano's going to be absolutely fuming about that. He has such a phenomenal qualifying session. Oh, and Blurry Julio's gone off track. Unfortunately, the singular lap that could have defined this race for him has gone right off the road, and that's going to be the end of Blurry's qualifying run. Unfortunately for him, he's going to have to go back into the pits, and he's not going to be able to set a competitive lap time. Let's take a look at what Davies is up to. Roughly 5/10 up on his time. I'm going to have to watch him go through the Sector 2 just to make sure of that. Blurry now coming through Sector 2. Let's see how much he's up on his current lap time by. He's currently in P6 with a 128.1. He is 5/10 up on his current lap time. Sets a purple Sector 2. A phenomenal lap from Blurry, a phenomenal lap from Davey, who's currently in P6. Davey now, will he be able to take provisional pole away from Volcano? Comes across the line. What sort of times will he set? He sets a 127.5. A very respectable lap time from the Haas driver as he promotes himself up into P2. Absolutely sensational. And although Volcano is unfortunately going to get a 5-place grid penalty, he's going to want to try to make as much of a progress on the rest of the field as he possibly can. And with time running out, since time has ended in the qualifying session, this will be the final time he will be able to set for himself. Volcano now coming across the line. What sort of times will he be able to set? He sets a 126.9, becoming the only driver to enter the 126. A very impressive lap time from him. Bambino, on the other hand, trying his level best, but unfortunately it doesn't look like he's going to be improving in this occasion, and he's going to be most likely starting off the race in P4 unless somebody else has anything to say about it. DDK comes across the line, and no, he cannot get past Bambino. Will finish up in P5. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that will bring the end to our qualifying session. Volcano manages to take pole position, but obviously will be getting his 5-place grid penalty. So Jaguar will actually be starting on pole. Davies will be starting in P3, Bambino in P4, and DDK in P5. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, we are all set to get the Japanese Grand Prix underway. It's been a very interesting qualifying session for us. It went down to the last few minutes as Volcano unfortunately loses his provisional pole position, but obviously, granted his pace, I wouldn't be surprised to see him fighting near the front of the grid very, very quickly, assuming that he can get through the rest of the pack safely. Just a few more minutes now. It seems like there's a few clouds in the air, but regardless, we should be in store for a very exciting race. There's 5 red lights. It's lights out and away we go here at Suzuka. Jaguar seems to have gotten off to an amazing start. Davey following very closely behind him and now has the inside line. Davey sends it down the inside and manages to make the move stick on Jaguar, but Jaguar not letting up, trying to stick around the outside, but this opens a room for the Mercedes, which tried to squeeze through, but unfortunately he's going to have to stick back for now. We'll take a quick chance to take a look at what sort of tires these drivers are running. So Davey in the who's currently in P1 running the medium compounded tires. We have Jaguar in P2 and Bambino in P3 running the mediums. Very interesting choice. We can see Volcano, who did obviously drop down 5 positions, currently in P6 running the softs. So it's a bit of a mix. Jack Kings being the only driver currently in P12 to run the hard tire compound. A very interesting and bold strategy choice from him, as none of the pack seems to agree with that decision, but alas, we'll see how it turns out for him. Looking down the grid, we can see Zab and Blurry Julio actually coming into a battle once again. This is for P9. Zab around the outside manages to make the move stick, and this opens the door for Saeed, as it looks like Blurry may have some potential damage. I thought he was losing out on a few positions. He was losing out on quite a considerable amount of top speed there. But no, it seems like it was just a weird camera angle. Bringing our attention near the front of the grid, we can see Volcano, who's in the midfield at this moment, roughly a 1/10.5 behind Nikudza, practically pushing that Aston Martin along, and he's just waiting for the best opportunity he can as he takes a peek and thought about diving down the inside, but thinks better off it. Will wait most likely until turn 1, where he'll hopefully get a better opportunity to maybe make a potential move. We're right on board with him to see as he's slowly gaining through that slipstream. Obviously no DRS just as yet. We can see Nikudza goes defensive, parks his car beautifully in the middle of the road as there's a bit of contact between both the drivers, but luckily Nikudza does manage to keep it out on track and doesn't spin out. But fantastic racing there from Nikudza, as he's done a wonderful job blocking off that potential move from Volcano. If we look up near the front of the grid, we can see Bambino's also getting extremely close to Jaguar, 3/10 separating both these drivers, and Nikudza actually dropped out of a second. And no, he's actually gained that right back on DDK. Oh, there seems to be a yellow flag. It did look like that was maybe Jag Kings who had some sort of moment there, but luckily for us, it doesn't look like it's going to cost him dearly. But now, looking at Bambino, who's only roughly a 2/10 behind as we get a chance to look at the possible strategies. Lap 11 to 13 is the expected pit stop window. We'll see. We'll be keeping an eye to see who's going to be undercutting, who's going to be overcutting, of course. And we can see Volcano actually making a move on Nikudza, sends it down the inside. There's not enough room to make an overtake there. And unfortunately, Volcano finds out the very hard way that there is not enough room to make that move stick. Unfortunately, that's going to be the end of his race as he drives straight into the wall there and retires from the session. Very surprisingly, though, we have no safety car out on track. But now we have another overtaking battle to witness between Trems and Nikudza, as Trems now sends it down the inside and manages to make the move stick and gets past Nikudza, who drops down into P6. Unfortunately, obviously, having that incident involved with Volcano earlier, but I really can't seem to blame Nikudza for that. That's such a fast left-hander that you can't be careless enough to send it down the inside there, or if you can, you have to really be... You're putting a lot of faith in the other driver to hopefully back out of that move, but it didn't seem like there was a possible overtaking opportunity there. But regardless, oh, as Nikudza goes slightly into the gravel there, nearly loses control of his car, and now is in completely left stranded as Samet now sends it down around the outside, and there's a bit of a tap from Nikudza as he nearly spins out the Haas, and Nikudza is actually losing a considerable amount of positions now, as Samet now also managing to make the move stick, and then Blurry Julio also getting past Nikudza dropping all the way down into P8. Things going from bad to worse for the Aston Martin driver. But as we progress through this race, we'll see if he's able to bounce back. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to. It does take a massive hit on your confidence as well once you get involved in an incident like this. But I hope to God Nikudza isn't about to repeat the same mistakes Volcano made earlier, but no, he isn't. And we can see Blurry actually getting very eager to get past this Haas. Lap 4, of course, DRS has been enabled, and now we can take a look at Jaguar, who's catching up to Davey, and Davey goes defensive Jaguar around the outside, trying to make the move step, but with that inside line, Davey's trying to catch up, but unfortunately he's unable to. Jaguar, with a fantastic move, manages to promote himself up into P1. Now some great racing from Jaguar, and what a beautiful overtake from him. Looking down the field, we can see Cunning Fern actually getting past Perzemu, and that was for the final points position in this race in P10. There's a few yellow flags out on track, but we still haven't had a safety car as of yet, even though I would have argued that we most definitely should have had one. Granted, Volcano's massive crash. At the moment, things seem pretty tame between the drivers, as there's a bit of a gap between each and every one of them. You can see Bambino's actually catching up to Davey significantly. It must be around that time where it looks like these... No, there's no way. I thought it could have been like the soft tires are already falling off, but I can't seriously believe that, can I? And Bambino very eager to get past Davies as soon as possible, practically pushing that Haas along. Obviously, Davies will have the DRS from the car ahead, and Bambino's going to obviously struggle a little bit to catch up to him. But Davies now actually managing to catch up to Jaguar, but unfortunately seems to be a bit too far ahead to make a potential move, unless he can force Jaguar into committing some sort of mistake. And just look at that time gain by Bambino through Sector 1. He's just so much faster than Davies through there. It just looks like his car has just that much more grip. And Nikudza unfortunately gets a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Things really do be going... that's the problem with... Oh, as Blurry Julio has some sort of incident there, completely loses traction and drives into the wall there. It doesn't... I'll have to see if he has some sort of front wing damage. At a quick glance, it didn't seem to be the case, but we'll see. But granted by his timing sheet, if he's losing out on time to the drivers ahead. But obviously, this is what I was talking about earlier in qualifying as well. It's so easy to just lose the car on a track like this. You have to stay so hyper-focused all the time. But now watching Bambino, who's roughly a 10th behind Davies. Actually, whoa, what happened there? I'm not too sure how, but Davies completely lost that position to Bambino. I'm guessing that he probably went wide, and Bambino took a great line through there and manages to get past the Haas driver. I wish you had a better camera angle of that. I didn't get a chance to really understand what happened there. But regardless, Bambino now promoted up into P2. But obviously Davies is not gonna wanna let this go immediately. But Bambino just seems so much quicker than him, and then medium compounded tires. Obviously still not quick enough. And interestingly enough, DDK has caught up to Davies as well. So it seems to be these soft tires really have fallen off around lap 5. And Davies and Trems looking like they're kind of like stranded out there like sitting ducks. Obviously only 21 laps left to go. Oh, and once again Davies has had some sort of moment there, so that lack of traction is significantly... No, that was That was Bambino who had that incident? Wow, so it looked like Bambino had a moment through that corner and lost out a significant amount of positions. I thought it was the Haas that went off track there for a few seconds, but no, Bambino loses out on 2 positions to DDK and Davey. And Bambino now pushing DDK along, trying to get that position back. This is that camera angle we had earlier, which didn't help me understand what happened, but I guess every time we come through there, I'll try to ride on board instead. But now we can see that Bambino is actually losing out on a ton of straight line speed, so he's obviously running a higher downforce setup, which should help him through Sector 1, but obviously in this straight line he's massively struggling. Oh, as there's a bit of a moment there from Davey as his car goes completely sideways. And how will this line him up? Oh, as now DDK has a massive moment and his car goes sideways. Bambino manages to get past Davey, manages to get past DDK, and now is looking to make a move on Davey. Davey goes defensive. DDK and Bambino around the outside. There's a bit of collision between the drivers, but no, Bambino does manage to make the move stick and promotes himself up into P2, and that allows a possible overtaking opportunity for DDK, who unfortunately cannot capitalize on the moment presented to him and will have to stay in P4 at the moment. So just for a split second, it looked like we were going to have like a 3-car pileup between P2 to P4, but luckily we avoided that. And this racing alone and this battling between drivers has costed Bambino a heavy amount of time, as Jaguar now roughly 2 seconds ahead from than the rest of the pack. And Davey's actually managing to drop, and Bambino's actually managing to drop Davey. And significant amount of pace. He's just trying to utilize the Haas to keep the rest of the pack behind him for as long as he possibly can. That seems to be what Davey's doing at the moment. Lap 7 of 20, 20 laps to go. And it is lap 7 or lap 8 where Davey decides that enough's enough and decides to head into the pits to switch off of his soft compounded tires. Now we'll keep our eye on Trems at the moment with DRS, who's unable to utilize that DRS and catch up to DDK at the moment. Will unfortunately have to stick behind him for until another opportunity presents itself. However, interestingly enough, DDK's red light is blinking, which signifies less than 10% ERS. So he's obviously been using everything he's had in the tank to keep this position, but granted, now that he has Trems behind him, how will he handle this? Seems like Blurry's actually gone on to the hard compounded tires, looking to make those last to the very end of the race. This battle over here, Zab and Prezema being one of the most closest battles out on track at the current moment. Obviously, Jaguar currently in P1 is pulling away as Bambino picks up a 3-second time penalty for track invalidations. And currently sitting in P2 with DDK roughly 1.6 seconds behind him. He's going to need to pull out a big miracle here if he's looking to not lose a position by the end of the race. We should also be, interestingly, keeping our eye on Jack Kings, who had that hard compounded tire, was the only driver to start on the hards. And it looks like it's going well for him so far, currently in P9. Trem's trying to close that gap to DDK as much as possible. Ooh, as DDK had a bit of a moment through that S section there. And luckily does not lose the cars. There's a yellow flag in Sector 1. There's a bit of an incident involving Saeed and Zab, or Zab managing to get past Saeed beautifully. One of the two. Best commentator, thank you. Oh, what is this? It looks like Jaguar had some sort of incident, and that gap that was roughly 1.5 seconds has dropped down to just half a second between P1 and P2. So what does this mean for Jaguar? Obviously now Bambino seems to be on an absolute charge for P1 at the moment, heading towards 130R and now coming towards the final chicane. He's not obviously going to be able to make the move here, but if he can close this gap significantly enough, we may be looking at a potential move heading into turn 1. And seeing Bambino as he's trying to keep his car as steady as possible to get as perfect of a run through this corner as he possibly can. DRS now wide open, riding on board with Bambino. How will Jaguar defend from this? Jaguar seems to be going defensive. No, he parks his car in the middle of the track, and that doesn't allow Bambino to make a potential overtake. Fantastic racing from Jaguar as he prevents that move from Bambino. Seemed like Jaguar was using quite a considerable amount of his battery to make sure that Bambino doesn't catch up next to him. And now 2/10 separating P1 and P2 as they're 3.2 seconds ahead from the rest of the field. Obviously there are also closer battles happening near the lower half of the grid, but I do want to keep my attention on the current battle for the lead of the race in case I just don't miss anything. But now, from what we've seen earlier regarding Bambino's onboards and his pace compared to the rest of the field, he was losing a significant amount of time out on the straights. And now riding on board with him over here, this is what I want to see. Despite the slipstream, he's just not really there with that top end speed. Doesn't look like it. But obviously that's why DRS and the ERS are such useful tools to these drivers, and it's all about using them sensibly and when to use them and how to use them. DRS now wide open for Bambino, and now he's significantly closer to Jaguar as he now takes the inside line and manages to make the overtake before the corner even begins. Bambino now promotes himself into P1. Jaguar obviously getting dropped down into P2, will not be looking to lose out on this position, will be trying to keep it as close as possible with Bambino through this S section, but Bambino obviously running that higher downforce setup will be quicker than the Red Bull through these corners. Bambino will win. I wouldn't be surprised. He's won the last 4 races he's participated in. He is definitely a fantastic driver, to say the least. But with that move out of the way, I think we can now give some of the spotlight to the drivers and the rest of the grid. So Zab currently at the moment 3/10 behind Przemu. Said obviously 3/10 behind Zab. These 3 drivers keeping it very, very neck and neck. And obviously we have Jack Kings in the back there on his 10-lap old hards. Safety car will screw him, don't worry, most likely. Very impressive from Tier 2, despite having 1 DNF. We're 11 laps into this race at Suzuka and we still have no safety car. Right, going back to the action at hand now. Zab is roughly 5/10 off of Przemu. And coming to this final chicane, Trem's now actually heading into the pits in lap 12 of 27. Decides to actually go when the pit window was open for those soft tire compounds. But it seems like he's gotten a terrible run out of this corner. Saeed with his DRS looking to maybe make a potential overtake, but unfortunately he's just too far back on this instance. But the driver that has the best view to this entire fight would be Jack Kings at this current moment, as these 3 drivers are carefully following each other through this S section, making sure that they don't spin out under this dirty air. Ooh, as we can see, Saeed riding that curb a bit too much there. Luckily he keeps it out. He keeps it on track at the moment. All for P6 at the moment. And interestingly enough, going back to that fight that we saw way earlier between Jaguar and Bambino, Jaguar is unfortunately kind of getting dropped behind now, 7/10 separating him and Bambino. But this is typically the case. We can see that Bambino gains through those high downforce corners. But Jaguar obviously catches back up through the straight line due to his straight line speed. But Bambino also has a 5-second penalty, so not to forget that, assuming as Cunning Fern actually also picks up a 3-second time penalty. Or was it 5 seconds or 3 seconds? I need to make sure. It was 3 seconds. It was Nikudza with the 5-second penalty. He's unfortunately in P12 at the moment. Oh, and now it looks like Bambino's had some sort of moment. Now the gap coming down between Bambino and Jaguar to roughly 3/10. Oh, 4/10. Oh, that was probably because of the DRS zone. Never mind. And the second I switch off of this fight, we can now see that overtakes are being made. Now we can see Saeed sending it down the inside of Zabs. Makes a fantastic overtake. Zab actually losing out on 2 positions there by the looks of it, as Prezemu and Saeed both get past him. The second I switch off that fight, that is of course when they had to make the overtake. But congratulations to Prezemu and Saeed for promoting themselves up to P4 and P5 respectively. But obviously, with how close these drivers were to each other, I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to stick with each other. As Zab's now actually beginning to slowly drop back compared to the rest of the field. Meanwhile, Saeed actually considerably closing the gap between himself and Prezemu. These 3 drivers obviously doing the best they can to stay as close to each other as possible. And then we have Jack Kings in the back there, who's also been just slowly bringing himself closer to make a potential overtake. Can't believe I'm paying attention. I don't think so. That's kind of I can't believe you're paying attention either. I'll be very honest. Now then, with Zab out of the way, Saeed is now going to be looking to make a clean overtake on Prezemu. He's only 2.5 tenths behind him at the moment, right before the DRS. Right before the DRS zone. And Saeed trying to take an alternative line through there to get a very nice run in. And a nice run is absolutely what he's gotten. But unfortunately for him, Prezemu goes straight back into the pits. But actually, Saeed may be still able to utilize the DRS, which he is able to do. And that's going to help him defend from Jack Kings, as now Saeed gets promoted up into P3. Obviously, after the pit stops made by the rest of the grid, as they're all switching onto the hard compounded tires, with only 13 laps left to go. I think it's very clear that the medium to hard was definitely the better strategy to be on at the moment. And Jack Kings on his hard tires will obviously be needing to come into the pits in just a few more moments. As Blurry picks up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. Tier 2 strategy. As a Tier 1 driver yourself, Rigo, what strategy would you be using? I'd personally go from soft to wets. That's just me. Jack King significantly catching up to Saeed now. Those medium compound tires are really falling apart. And will Saeed come into the pits? He decides not to go into the pits, decides to keep going with his medium tires. And now Jack Kings with DRS wide open will be making no problems of Saeed, as he manages to get past him significantly earlier than the corner and promotes himself up into P3. Trem setting the fastest lap time of the race with a 1:30.2. Obviously on his first set of mediums. DDK on the other hand, getting extremely close to Trem's. And damn, the top guys are lapping 1 second faster than Saeed. Hey man, you never know. I'm still hopeful for a safety car. That is all I want. I still want a safety car. As Bambino actually comes into the pits now. Your race leader has finally come into the pits to switch off of his medium tire compounds. Jaguar decides to continue on and will decide not to come in. Bambino switching onto the soft actually. He wants them to last roughly 10 laps, which I think he should be able to very easily pull off. Granted that he doesn't absolutely destroy his tires. You say he needs more shade? Overcast, maybe? You give him like the tiny umbrella that's just most of the drivers have when it's raining and they're sitting out. A little rain never hurt nobody. That's what I'm saying. Give me something, Suzuka. Just a safety car, some rain, anything. I'll take anything. Well, with 11 laps left to go. God, it would be so funny if it just started absolutely pouring. But now Davey extremely close to Saeed. 8 lap fresher tire, 8 lap old tires. Snow. Davey extremely close to Saeed. Saeed obviously on those 15-lap-old mediums will not be able to do much to defend from this position, but they're going side by side with each other. But no, Davey does manage to make the move stick and promotes himself up into P3 and now has his sights set on Jag Kings, who's just up the road from him. Jaguar has now come into the pits and switched onto the soft tire compound. How will Davey defend from this? He does take that inside line, but of course, Saeed try. It's about to be a three-way fight, all for P2 at the current, all for P1 at the current moment. And at the moment, it seems like Davey's going to be coming out ahead. Saeed does manage to get past Jag Kings as well with his medium tires. I was hoping for all three of them to send it into turn one, but unfortunately, that's not what we get. Davey's now currently leads the race with in lap 17 of 27. Saeed in P2 obviously hasn't come into the pits to switch off of his 16-lap-old mediums, and Jag Kings currently in P3 with Bambino on his fresh softs right behind him, and that wasn't going to happen for too long as Bambino now promotes himself up into P3. Saeed obviously not going to be able to do much to defend from this Mercedes as it's practically pushing that Alpine along. And now a very clean overtake from Bambino as he sends it down the inside and manages to make the move on Saeed. Promotes himself up into P2 and only has Davey in front of him now. Obviously Bambino has that 3-second penalty, so this is a great opportunity for him to maybe create a bit of a gap to the rest of the field, to maybe not allow that penalty to heavily affect his finishing position. Rooting for a safety car and a Saeed win. Absolutely. Always rooting for a safety car and a Saeed win. And Bambino now, with his soft compounded tires, decides not to send it down the inside of Davies as we saw from Volcano earlier in the session. And still deciding to stay behind him at the current moment. But obviously, with the fresher compound and the soft tire compound, it's not really much of a fight as Davies absolutely loses his car. 16 laps on the mediums was too much for him as he's unfortunately spun out and lost a considerable amount of positions. Oh, that's rough. You got to feel for him. Davies unfortunately now down in P7 and Bambino currently leading the race. It seems to be a position switch between Trems and Jaguar. I'm not too sure why, or maybe they're just not there. Maybe there are no team orders at Red Bull. Jaguar should be going through, seeing as how he's on the faster compounded tires. Tier 1 should be moved to Sundays for Bambino. Thursdays. Not a whole lot of love at the Red Bull team by the looks of it, as they're both very aggressively fighting with each other. And now Jaguar actually does manage to get past Trems. Seemed like Trems let him go, which is a more sensible decision to make. And Jag Kings and Saeed and DDK all extremely close to each other, and DDK trying to send it down the inside. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to make that move stick, but now gets right back into the slipstream of the McLaren. DDK looking for any opportunity he can. He obviously has a much fresher hard compounded tires as compared to Jag Kings. Jag Kings obviously still hasn't come into the pits for his pit stop as of yet. And DDK now sending it down the inside of the chicane. And unfortunately, he can't get the move done, but he does get a switchback. And a fantastic switchback from DDK as he manages to make the move and promotes himself up into P3. Jag Kings unfortunately cannot do anything to combat that. And unfortunately, DDK with that DRS as well will not be losing this position out to him in the straight. Wonderful racing as we see Saeed Al Falasi switch onto the intermediates. Oh my lord. Lap 19 of 27. 8 laps left to go. And Saeed Al Falasi has switched onto the inters. I don't see any drops of rain. Either my screen isn't showing him or I just can't seem to notice him, but I genuinely do not see any drops of rain. I have no idea why Saeed would switch onto the Enders. Tier 2 strategy, Sui. Jaguar now 4.5 tenths behind Jag Kings. Obviously, Jaguar was on his 2-lap old softs. The gap between Bambino and DDK also, interestingly enough, is 5.9 seconds. So assuming it stays that way, Bambino, despite his penalty, will still be winning this race. And it doesn't look like Jag Kings is really going to be able to do much here. I wouldn't be surprised if he does head into the pits on this occasion, which he still has not done. Jag Kings does not care. He will keep running those hard tires and unfortunately loses out on another position and drops down into P4 as Jaguar gets promoted up into P3. We can see Samet and Davey extremely close to each other as well. So he thought this was sprint and thought he would get pole for next race. Saeed from Dubai sees clouds and immediately goes for inters. Oh my lord. Jaguar now with 7. Oh wait. Oh no, I do see drops. There are, as a matter of fact, drops of rain out on the circuit. Has Saeed Al Falasi absolutely pulled off a masterclass of a strategy? There is absolutely no way Saeed has actually called it. There is no way. I refuse to believe this. I'm actually so shocked. Ferrari master gets an Alpine master. It's a Saeed masterclass. As both Jaguar and DDK go off the track, both drivers significantly struggling for grip, and neither of them come in. Oh, migrating host, huh? Wait. Blurry Julio has left the session. Have I been disconnected? I can't tell what's happening. I'm not too sure what happened there. I've been kicked from the party as well. Alright, fair enough. I gotta get back into this session. Hold on. Apologies for that. There's no way my Wi-Fi dies the second the most entertaining part of this stupid race happens. Alright, there we go. Right, so last time we saw Saeed was about to pull off an absolute masterclass. And he was near the bottom end of the grid. But where I want to see now, Saeed is still currently in P10. And most of these drivers are significantly struggling with their tires. As we can see, Saeed leading the charge with his inters, currently in P10. Obviously has a significant amount of positions to catch up on. Lap 21 of 27, 6 laps left to go. This is the entertainment we needed from Suzuka. Bambino still deciding that no, he does not want to switch onto the inters, has decided to keep the softs on for once again another lap, along with Jaguar and DDK. The top 3 choosing to keep the dry compounded tires for as long as possible, but with 5 more laps left to go in this race. And Saeed absolutely flying and catching up towards Zab. Will it be enough to maybe get towards the front of the grid? I guess there's only really one way to find out. Blurry Julio now also coming into the pits to switch onto the inters. Someone gonna put it in the wall, safety car? I hope. I am praying on someone's downfall just so I can get a safety car. That is literally everything I asked for in this race. Rain and a safety car. That's perfect. Why is it never these conditions when I race? Right. Now, as much as I was entertained on the on the battle for first place throughout this race. Now I'm completely dead set on riding on board with Saeed Al-Falasi through these last few laps. The track is getting significantly wetter. But how are Bambino and Jaguar dealing with this? So watching them now. Oh yeah, Bambino's struggling. I was saying losing time to Zab on the hards. Yeah, 4 laps left to go. This track is getting significantly wetter, but I don't think it's gonna be enough. One would have hoped Saeed would have pulled off an absolute masterclass, but he is gaining back on Zab now. That is a good sign. No, never mind. How is he losing time? Right. Easy Trems has actually closed the gap to Jack Kings very nicely. 11 lap old mediums versus 22 lap old hards. I am fairly certain Jack Kings... Yeah, Jack Kings has not made a single pit stop, has he? Oh, and he is struggling on those tires as Trems from so far back can make the easy move down the inside of that McLaren. And through that corner they come, and Trems now currently promoted up into P4. Yeah, 22 lap old hards. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, the track is more wet, but you can still see Saeed is still losing time to Zab, so I don't know what to tell you. And granted that there's only 3 more laps left to go in this session, we're not going to be, I don't think we're going to be having a safety car anymore, so that's most likely the end of that. Interestingly enough, you can see Davey is actually catching up very quickly to Saeed. It's almost like Saeed's not... Oh my. It almost looks like as if Saeed's not even on the inter tires. Last 2 laps are wet. Yeah, oh man. Davey gets extremely squirrely through that exit there. Now there seems to be a significant gap between most of the drivers, so I think that's most likely with 3 laps left to go. Obviously track conditions are getting much worse, but I don't know if it'll warrant a pit stop. I don't think it will. No, it's 100% Inter's weather. I mean, like, if I go on to anybody, you can see, like, as if, like, DDK not coming through this corner. You can just hear and see how much he's having to, like, slide and go easy on the gas so that he doesn't spin out. It's definitely Inter conditions. It's just with 3 laps left to go and nobody really going into the pits to switch onto the inners. It's just interesting. Yeah, now Saeed gains a second in the sector. 2 laps left to go. Saeed Al-Falasi, what can you do? As Prezemu and Zab both coming into a battle with each other on those dry sets of tires. And Saeed Al-Falasi absolutely sending it down the inside of the McLaren. And now has his sights set on the Aston Martin himself. Now coming towards that extremely fast left-hander Saeed. How is Zab pulling away in certain corners? I still don't understand. Jack Kings now comes into the pits and switches on to the Inters. And now Saeed Al-Falasi closing in on Zab, looking to promote himself up into P7, and it's not really going to be much of a fight, is it? Saeed Al-Falasi also manages to get past Jack Kings, promotes himself up into P6. From P10 to P6, Saeed Al-Falasi has absolutely pulled a masterclass. 2 laps left to go in this race, and none of the drivers ahead of him have come in to pit for the Inters. Oh, man. There is a very, very big possibility we could be seeing Saeed on the podium. He's just going to absolutely need to send it in these last 2 laps. 16-second gap towards P5. I am hopeful someone or the other is going to make a massive mistake and they're going to absolutely spin out. Oh yeah, he's just so much slower. And through this little section alone. Oh, come on, Saeed. You gotta send it more than that, man. Come on. Just keep throwing the car into these corners. Just go as fast as you possibly can. Lap 26 of 27, penultimate lap, and I believe time is slowly running out for him. Hopefully he can still grasp that podium. 14-second gap now to P5. Not catching enough. Yeah, I don't think so. The only thing that could save Saeed now is that Samet or Trems both get into some sort of incident and they both spin out off track. As that picks up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. If you stop 4 laps later, the hearts should be useless. They should be useless, but he's clearly making them work. Which, credit to Samet, he's driving a fantastic race. You know, still managing to stay and keep that bit of a gap to Saeed at the moment, but I actually don't think... Oh, Jack King's completely out of nowhere, sending it around the outside. I didn't even notice that the McLaren was right next to the next to the Alpine. That is not what Saeed needs right now. The last thing Saeed should have had in this situation was a car in his rearview mirror trying to get past him. Oh my lord. Well, we can see now with Bambino crossing that line, we have now begun the final lap of the race. Jack King's on the much fresher compound of intermediate tires. Saeed on his 7-lap-old Inters. Obviously, they're both going side by side, trying to make up as many positions as they possibly can. Jack King's now looking to send it around the outside of Saeed. Unfortunately, a bit too far back, but with the switchback, will he? No, never mind. He gets a run around the outside. A fantastic move by Jack King's through the rain. Manages to make that position stick. Manages to make the move stick and promotes himself up into P6, but the battle is far from over. Saeed Al-Falasi now is trying to stick into the slipstream of the McLaren, but unfortunately, he just doesn't have that top speed. And Jack King manages to pull away. 12.6 seconds now separating him and Samet. A fantastic move there from Jack King to promote himself up into P6. I'll also have to bring my attention towards Bambino in a few seconds just to obviously congratulate him. He's obviously going to be finishing on those dry compounded tires, but he's driven a fantastic race throughout. And obviously has that 3-second time penalty, but with 5.3 seconds separating him and P2, it's not really going to be much of an issue, is it? So then, ladies and gentlemen, I guess we did get whatever we asked for in terms of having rain, having, well, no safety car, unfortunately, though that would have spiced things up significantly. But you can't take away from what was an overall fantastic performance from Bambino as he comes across the line and wins the Japanese Grand Prix. Jaguar now coming across the line will be finishing up in P2. DDK, I think despite having a penalty, will be able to finish in P3. Trems now a bit far back will be able to finish up in P4. And you can see, unfortunately, Jack King's unable to catch up to Samet. And that's going to be the end of this race. Trems finishing up in P4. Samet finishing up in P5. Jack King's obviously going to come across the line and finish up in P6. Saeed, assuming that he doesn't bin it in this final corner, will be coming across the line and finishing in P7. And that will be bringing an end to what it was an overall very, very, very entertaining race. My heart really goes out to Saeed, though. I wanted it to happen so bad. I wanted the dream to happen so bad. But big congratulations to Bambino. Great race from him. And once again, another win in his books. And that makes it 5 straight wins for him, at least in races that he's participated in. Is there anybody that's going to be able to stop Bambino? Inters were faster, but couldn't risk it with a few laps left, and couldn't risk it last few laps in P3. Yeah, no, I think granted the position that you were in at that moment, I think it was probably the best decision that you didn't come into the pits. I mean, clearly you finished on the podium, but yeah, no, I think switching onto the inters, how early Saeed did it was probably the best thing that could happen for him. He does finish up in P7 at the end of the day, so a great race from him. But yes, of course, that's going to be all from me. Thank you all so much for tuning into ALR's Tier 2. We'll go next Thursday for what should be more exciting racing as we go towards... I have no idea what that flag is. I guess we'll find out next week. So thank you all so much for tuning in to Tier 2. And I hope to see you all next week.